Shana Tova. A few stories to begin the new year. Story 1 from our tradition. In the beginning, the world was without form and void, and darkness covered the face of the earth, and everything was tohu vavohu, primordial chaos. And God breathed out and spoke the world into being, and the heavens and the earth were made, and it was good. And God breathed out another tremendous breath, and all the plants and animals, every creeping, crawling thing, all the swimming things, and all the things that walk the earth were breathed into being. And it was good. And God shaped the first human from the soil and blew into his nostrils the breath of life. The human breathed in and became a living being. And it was good. And God settled the humans in the Garden of Eden to till and to tend it. As Jews, we believe that tonight, Rosh Hashanah, is the anniversary of these acts of creation, the moments that God breathed out, the very birthday of the world. Story 2, from the future we choose, by scientists Christina Figueroa and Tom Rivett-Carnac. It is 2050, and the first thing that hits you is the air. In many places around the world, the air is hot, heavy, and depending on the day, clogged with particulate pollution. Your eyes water. Your cough never seems to disappear. You can no longer simply walk out the front door and breathe air. There might not be any. Instead, before opening doors or windows in the morning, you check your phone to see what the air quality will be. Everything might look fine, sunny and clear, but you know better. When storms and heat waves overlap and cluster, the air pollution and intensified surface ozone levels make it dangerous to go outside without a specially designed face mask, which only some can afford. The world is getting hotter. From 2050 to 2070, projections tell us that temperatures in some areas of the globe will rise even higher, an irreversible development utterly beyond our control. Which means that there are very few forests left, most of them either logged or consumed by wildfires. And the permafrost is belching greenhouse gases into an already overburdened atmosphere. The increasing heat of the earth is suffocating us, and in another 5 to 10 years, vast swaths of the planet will be inhospitable to humans. We don't know how habitable the regions of Australia, North Africa, and the western United States will be by 2100. No one knows what the future holds. Tipping point after tipping point is being reached, casting doubt on the form of future civilization. Some say that humans will be cast to the winds again, gathering in small tribes, hunkered down and living on whatever patch of land might sustain them. Story 3. Every creation story, from Native American to Jewish, imagines that the world was created with an element of brokenness. The coastal Salish people, a Native American tribe from Seattle, teach that Coyote, the trickster, secretly broke all of the things that the master had created in the beginning of creation. The Salish teach that we still live with that brokenness. The Alaskan Tlingit people, another tribe, teach that when Raven created the world, Raven was a trickster like Coyote. So he created the world through an act of theft. He stole the sun from another sky. He put it in a box and brought it to earth. Then he used his claws to scratch out our rivers and valleys, our lakes and streams. The world Raven created was, they teach, also made through brokenness. For us as Jews, Lurianic Kabbalah teaches that the act of creation began when God, whose pure energy and light filled the universe, contracted God's self and poured all of the divine energy and light into vessels. With God confined in those vessels, other things had room to exist. But the vessels, strong as they were, could not hold such powerful divine energy, and they shattered into millions of pieces. And as they did, sparks of holiness fell to earth and implanted themselves in everything and everyone. Our mission as Jews, taught Isaac Luria, is to use our lives to reunite the divine sparks in an act of mending, or tikkun olam, and thereby heal the world. Story 4. The Zohar, our foundational work of Jewish mysticism, teaches the following. With one breath, God made the world. With another breath, it is sustained. That is, God breathed the world into being. And it is God's ongoing breathing that is the animating force behind the continued existence of the world. This is our fundamental Jewish creation metaphor. Breath animates creation and is the scaffolding supporting creation. Without breath, there is no life. God exhaled life into Adam, who breathed in the very first human breath. The same is true for each of us. We are born, an obstetrician smacks us on the tush, and we take our very first breath. As a result, Jewish law states that life begins not at conception, but 9 months later, when a baby takes its very first breath. Today, our collective breath is compromised. This past spring, the air outside turned gray, then brown, then orange. The air smelled like fire. The newscasters warned us to stay inside, make sure our windows and doors were closed, and that our air filters, if we had them, were running. We couldn't go for walks outside or runs. We couldn't even walk our dogs. The elderly and pregnant, the frail and ill couldn't go outside at all. Inhaling felt strange. The air scratched our throats or burned. For those of us with asthma, breathing took effort. How scary, we said to each other. I'm so glad this never happens. And the scientists looked at us and they said, get used to it. This is the new normal. As the world gets warmer and the forests get drier, it will only take a single spark to create a conflagration, and for the northern and western forests to become tinderboxes. The uncommon is going to become common. Don't get rid of your masks. Buy air filters for your home. It's just going to get worse. In The Duties of the Heart, a medieval work of Jewish mysticism, Baha ibn Pakuda writes the following. The air that is breathed, since one cannot possibly exist without it, the Creator provided it. And since human beings, while also needing water, can exist without water for a longer period than they can without air, the Creator distributed air over the entire surface of the earth. But the places where water is collected are not found everywhere, as is the case with air. Water has to be bought with money by some people. It is good that this is not the case with air. Air exists for all and is obtained equally. He was actually a genius. I know this doesn't necessarily sound like it, but he was. Baha ibn Pakuda was right for his time. But if we continue the way we have been, we will all have to pay for clean air. And the poorest will not be able to afford it. They will breathe polluted air and drink polluted water. They will die of lung cancer and emphysema at staggering rates. And eventually, we will too. So where do we go from here? As some of you know, this past August, I spent a week on the island of Sitka, Alaska, officiating the wedding of 2 of my former Yale students. And one of the days I was there, I went on a kayak tour of Sitka and the surrounding islands. My tour guide, Haley, who is in her 20s, aspires to become a botanist or a biologist someday. And as we made our way across the shoreline, she kept pointing out branches of delicate webbed moss hanging from every tree. Spanish moss, I asked? It's actually beard lichen, she told me. I brought some of it back for you so we can pass it around if you want. But the native people of Sitka, the Tlingit, they call it usnia. And it's really special because it only grows where the air is pure. It has to be 90% pure or more. It's a kind of litmus test for the environment. So if you don't see usnia, you know it's a bad sign. Wow, I said. Yeah, Haley continued, but that's not all. Usnia is also a very important medicine for the Tlingit people. It's antimicrobial, so they've used it for centuries to pack wounds, make into poultices, and take orally if they feel like they're coming down with a cold or the flu. But if the air is polluted, the usnia disappears. We rode over to the shore where we could drag our hands across the low branches draped with usnia. It was deceptively delicate, a webbing that looked soft from a distance, but up close was tightly bound and strong. A few days later, feeling like I was brewing a cold, I went to visit the island's local herbalist, because your rabbi's a hippie, to learn more about usnia. The herbalist, who grew up in Sitka, keeps a big supply of usnia on hand, which he said is still used in all kinds of medicinal formulations. Here we have a lot of usnia, he explained. But as the air around the world gets dirtier, it's going to be harder and harder to find. He then filled up a bottle for me with an usnia tincture, with instructions to take it twice a day until I started to feel better. I followed his advice, and within 36 hours, my cold had disappeared. Which brings us back to the creation story in the Garden of Eden. After all, in the garden, the Torah tells Adam and Eve, tells us Adam and Eve had everything they needed to live, to thrive, and to heal. Everything they needed, food and medicine, clean air and water, was provided. This new world was one miracle after another: plants that could be eaten, trees that provided shade and shelter, mosses that were soft enough to sleep on. Today, we know that all of this has taken millions of years to evolve in concert with each other. Every ecosystem an exquisite symphony of codependence, each one full of countless small miracles, some so microscopic they're invisible to the human eye, others vast invisible galaxies. The usnia, the trees outside our sanctuary, the invisible ozone that filters the UV light. Together, they are the lungs of the world, the lungs of creation. But as the creation stories tell us, there is brokenness that must be mended first. If it is not, and we continue as we have been, driving gas guzzlers, burning coal, clear-cutting forests, spewing methane into the air, we will literally suffocate ourselves, and our great-grandchildren will not know what it is to take a deep breath. When I left Sitka and my plane landed in Seattle, it was to an air particulate level of 179. The pilot came on the intercom and told us that if we had them, we should make sure to put on our masks before we left the plane. Because of more wildfires up north, he explained, the Seattle air was toxic to breathe. It was actually dangerous. Try to stay inside, suggested the pilot as we readied for our descent through muddy, grayish-orange air. Stay inside. And I thought to myself, there used to be usnia here all over the Pacific Northwest. It has all died. As Jews, the Torah tells us we have an obligation to future generations. It also tells us that each of us is made in God's image, which is why we, like God, have the ability to create industries and countries, music and art. Our ability to create, like our ability to destroy, is awe-inspiring and powerful. And with that power comes the mandate to protect creation, an obligation that starts with each of us as individuals, but extends thousands of years into the future to millions of people we will never meet. So how do we move forward? How do we ensure a world of clean air and clean water? How do we ensure that future generations will be able to swim in our lakes and rivers and enjoy the sun rather than shrink from it? How do we avert impending ecological collapse? First, we vote, even in the most local elections. We use our individual power to choose candidates who will look plainly at climate science and projections instead of denying them, who put public interest ahead of private profit, and who think in decades, not dollars. Next, as individuals, we become less cavalier and thoughtless about our own consumption. We understand that having the newest iPhone or shoes or car has far bigger implications than just this moment and just this year. 90% of single-use plastics, like bottled water and takeout containers, are not recycled and end up in landfills. And so we choose differently, and we use the dollars we would have spent on more stuff to invest in solar panels and green technology, rather than continuing to justify individual excesses through human exceptionalism. Finally, and this is the hardest part of all, we accept that our survival as a species and as a planet is now a live question. We understand that our own survival cannot be untangled from the dying coral reefs, the warming seas, and the melting polar ice caps. And we become clear-eyed about what will happen if we do nothing. A world where extreme weather is an everyday event, where the air is unbreathable, food shortages have become commonplace, and coastal cities and even whole countries have been abandoned to the ocean. In Judaism, tonight and tomorrow are Yom Harat HaOlam, the very birthday of the world, the day creation was breathed into being. Every year we celebrate this, but we also go one step further. On Rosh Hashanah, the anniversary of creation, we commit to not just our own personal teshuvah, our own personal renewal and redemption, but we also commit to the renewal of the world as well. In the words of Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, if you want renewal, you must make yourself into a new creation. You can do this with one single breath, releasing the stale air and drawing in the fresh. Our very lives depend on this, he wrote. Every exhalation, the death of the moment that has passed in preparation for the birth of something new. This, he finishes, is true tshuva, the return from impurity to purity, from old to new, in order to gain new life. This new year, as we commit to our own personal forms of teshuvah, our own personal forms of renewal, may each of us do everything in our power to ensure that our world is renewed as well, and that for thousands of years to come, there will be new life. Shana Tova Umetuka, wishing you and yours a sweet, a happy, and a healthy new year.